I could not be more happy and more honored to invite to the show somebody that I've been waiting a very long time to chat to. Now, I know oftentimes I say quite often that I bring brilliant minds, but people I also know personally onto the podcast. And the beautiful thing about our next guest is I feel like I know her because I just kind of stalk all the things. So before I let her speak, because I'm going to be selfish for a second, I'm going to read a little something that I saw on her Instagram account. I want to give y'all a peek into this queen. She has a daughter by the name of London. Okay. London in bed this morning. Mama, get me some honey today. Honey is not a thing I stock at home, and I kind of forgot about her request, to be honest. Fast forward 7 hours, a waiter at a cafe counter, service only, as I'm drinking my second cup of tea, no honey milk, like I like it, sitting alone, minding my own business, actually writing a newsletter for y'all tomorrow, walks up to me with a tiny single serve jar of honey. Hi there, I thought you might like some honey. Me with raised eyebrows. Huh. Thank you. I don't take it in my tea, but I'll take it home. Him goes back and gets one other, brings it over, and then sets it down, saying, I think you need two. When I say this kid is a magical one, I mean it. She speaks it, and it just is. Legit, maybe 10 times a week. To be clear, London ain't even here. She's a mile away living her best life on a playground, and I'm over here receiving the fulfillment of the cosmic order she placed this morning. Moral: be like London. Want what you want, require it, and don't worry about how it'll happen. Just get on board and watch what happens. But wait, ladies and gentlemen, I will refuse to introduce to you Tara. Just a quick second, because somebody, because you know I creep. Somebody left a comment and said, "You just have to say it like it. You have to say it like London did. Speak it into existence." And then Tara-Nicholle Kirke responds with, "Well, first, you have to let yourself really want the fullness of what you want. Then you have to speak it and not book your calendar so full of the other stuff that you can't give life force to your real desire. Then you have to gradually release doubt, resistance, your own inner conflicts, and get into alignment with what you want. Speaking it is just one component. Ladies and gentlemen, Tara-Nicholle Kirke is out here ready to drop some knowledge bombs. Thank you to the Jasmine. I said thank you to the Jasmine Star Show. I said thank you for coming on to the Jasmine Star Show.
Oh my gosh. First of all, there has never been an introduction in the world of introducctions like that introduction. Also, I have so much. I'm like, we could just start. We could just have some church on that.
I'm like, thank you for listening to the show. We're done. We're done.
Oh, but we're not. We could be.
We could be.
Sometimes
but we won't.
yes, but we won't be done because and that is so well, cosmically, divinely well timed that was the thing that you chose to open this conversation with, because this is a season of coming. Listen, we had humanity as it evolves does this pendulum swing. Right. So we were on the pendulum end of like toxic power structures, repressive, internalized oppression for generations. And then, we've seen it we saw it swing back to the other extreme of like, I call it the love and light brigade. All is love and light, which is cute, but is not real life. It's certainly not real life for people who have experienced trauma or who will experience trauma, which is all people, all humans, right? That's just not real life. And so what I think people are, and we know that, the religious institutions have failed. So many of the cultural institutions have failed. And I'm excited about that, because what it's calling forth is this, search for spirituality and meaning that is useful in this life, for helping us like deal with the real challenges of this real life and really reach our full potential, and really live our big, beautiful dreams, but do it in the context of this real world and this real life and the real actual challenges that all of us face, right? And that's not I don't even wish. 5 years ago, I would have said, I wish it was about speaking it into existence and that's all it took. But what I know now, having been to like the way other side of the game and come back to report on it, is that like so much of the richness of who you are, all of us are destined to become, is who we become in the process of the inner conflicts, of having the desire and not letting ourselves have it and feeling that friction and disharmony, right? Of understanding, learning the process of resolving our own inner conflicts. And it's slow and it's gradual and it's shining light in the shadows and it's hard. It is not for the faint. The awakening, the journey of an awakening human soul is not for the faint hearted. It just ain't.
Okay.
But it's delicious. I'm
Okay. It's
sorry, I
not
didn't
for
introduce
the
myself.
faint. No, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, no. We're gonna pause. We're gonna pause for the power of the moment because it is not for the faint of heart, but it is delicious.
It's delicious.
It is delicious. And so for people who are listening right now and be like, I just walked into a middle of a church sermon and I don't know where the heck I am. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're gonna be talking about today from a business context, because let's just be real. This queen could talk about a lot. And we're not going to talk about, this is coming to self-awareness, although it is. And it's about finding a deeper sense of self. It is. But first and foremost, we're going to lead with how we show up as business owners is a division of how we show up as humans. We're going to be talking about things of self-sabotage in business. But before we get there, I have to make sure that we give space for Tara-Nicholle to introduce herself and set the context of where we're going to start this conversation.
Let's do it. So I am Tara-Nicholle Kirke. Sometimes I say that I do PR for God, but today I'm here.
Okay.
Sometimes, no big deal. Actually, let's talk about the business lesson in that. Y'all got to figure out what you are the best in the world at and be that and stop messing around about it. Don't hesitate to say it. I am a master coach. I am a metaphysician, and I am a spiritual strategist to smart, successful, usually very repressed people who are living a little bit in the shadow of the lives that they came here to live. So what I do is help people reach their full potential and do their biggest dreams before they die. I help them do that by undoing their self-sabotage and the fear program that so many of us are living under. And in particular, I have a specialty in helping people heal and transform their inner critic. And that shows that work happens in a lot of ways. I do a little bit of coaching. I do a lot of consulting. I'm a writer. I teach a lot of courses and programs. But business people are my people, in part because I think in this new era, in this season of humanity, business is one of the ways that it is one of the ways that our callings, our soul callings, our sacred contracts in this generation, specifically of women, but people. Business is often showing up as the way in which our sacred contracts want to be carried out. And so I see for a lot, it's beautiful because I get to see our business callings and our business blocks, our money blocks, actually have their personal and spiritual development career within us. There's work that they are trying to do within us of helping us become the people that we are here to become. And at the same time, frankly, be very ideally wealthy. I mean, in my definition of spiritual well-being, health and wealth and wisdom and love and full free-flowing creative self-expression are all elements of that. So that's who I am. That's what I be about.
Well, welcome to the community that you have always belonged to. Let me just tell you, we drink from the same well. Okay. So when we talk, and one of the things I really appreciated with what you had said is that sometimes, or oftentimes, our business is an expression of the sacred contracts we are here to fulfill. And I love that. I love that mental imagery that I have been put on this earth to do something great and grand, and to do anything less would be to rob God, the universe, of the thing that I've been put here to do.
Yes.
But what are some of the most common forms of self-sabotage that you see specifically with business owners?
Oh my gosh, the procrastination. I'm going to even I'm going to take that even because I like to be real extreme just to because it's all, I have to put this in context piece in place. I'm going to try to say this. I'm going to even say this in an extreme way, and then I'm going to I'll work it out. Okay. None of this matters, you guys. You are beloved of this universe. None of it matters. You are truly, every hair on your head is beloved by the creative power that formed all worlds, whether you ever earn another dollar or write another book or sell another product or get out of bed another day in your life. Okay. Like you are loved. You are a droplet of the divine, period.
Mm.
So, in that context, then, all these like dreams and desires to have a business or to, create a movement or to impact people's lives. I know there are some people who would hear that and be like, well, why are we doing that? Well, I think we're doing that because it's what we're playing the creation game. Like we humans are the only beings that we know of on this planet that have the ability to think a thought and have an idea about something that doesn't exist and then make it exist. Right? So, and it feels really good when you do that because all of the things that are beneficial to the species in the planet actually feel really good when we do them, right? Think about like the perpetuation of the species, how that happens. It feels really good when you do the things that cause that to happen. So that's why creating feels so good. That's why it feels so good when you like do a thing that felt like it was hard and you are able to do it. You're like, oh, there's a little bit of you getting in touch with like the divine essence of who you are, your own power, right? Now, what was the original question you asked me? What are the common ways self-sabotage shows up? So procrastination is a big one of them. I like to talk about this one in an extreme way. I think of it as like marketing paralysis or self-marketing paralysis.
Ooh,
right?
Good distinction.
Right?
Great distinction.
Because so I was a marketer in my former, not in like a past life, but like literally like like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was a marketer. And I noticed this pattern of people who can go have a job, a high-powered job marketing somebody else's stuff, and they're brilliant at it.
Yes.
But then when they go into their own business to market them, so they cannot post on social media. It's right. So, which is like, and it's very intertwined with perfectionism, very intertwined with imposter syndrome. So those are like probably those are some of the most common. There are lots of them though. There are lots of codependency in your like personal relationships. So if you've ever known someone who is like very addicted to solving other people's problems in their lives in a way that keeps them like depleted and distracted from doing their own sacred contracts, that is a form of self-sabotage that most people don't even realize. Is they think they're just being very like giving, kind people. And I'm like, right, what would be really kind to the world is if you held those other people in your lives as powerful enough to solve their own problems, recouped your own life force and put it onto your callings.
Okay,
right. So those are some of them.
I want to pause here for a second. Look at I'm waving my hands and breaking my mic. So we have listed procrastination, the inability to market oneself, even though you have a unique skill set to market something or somebody else. We have codependency. We have perfectionism. So if you have of these smatterings of options in which we could self-sabotage, somebody listening is hearing and being like, I suffer from one or multiple, then what are some of the steps that we could take to stop? If we have acknowledged that we suffer from the ailment of perfectionism, what does one do?
Yeah. So the thing that they're all of these things are symptoms of one thing.
Ooh.
It's all symptom. So I actually try to avoid this thing where people are going to try to fix their procrastination by pulling one lever and fix their perfectionism by pulling another lever. Because there's stuff you can do, right? And then they're going to go get a coach and they'll get like an accountability program, and then they'll do like a time management system, and then it's just like it gets to be like all your whole life can be doing that stuff. I like to shine the light of awareness on the fact that at the root of all of these things is fear. Like, let's just cut through. Let's cut through the symptoms. Let's get to the root cause. The root cause of all of them is fear. And it's conditioned fear. It's programmed fear. And I don't want to get super, super cosmic. But most really, talented people had a time in their very early childhood where they were conditioned to believe they were like, good girl if you do the things this way, and bad girl if you do things another way. And over time, that just creates it shifts the focus of where we get our validation from. So as babies, we all are validated very internally. We know what feels good and what doesn't feel good to us, and we do what feels good to us, and we don't do the rest. But over time, it shifts so that we begin looking outside us for validation and for like, what's am I okay? I judge whether I'm okay by whether I'm getting good grades, or whether my parents are happy, or whether I'm getting raises, or whether I'm getting whatever. And that can create that like very fear based way of living and being, where you're really trying, most people that I work with are almost they're living most of their lives out of a desire to avoid unwanted outcomes versus like doing what feels really right to you to do. You know what I mean? That's why you hear so many people say, I'm not even sure what my calling is. Do I even have a purpose? You do. Your inner being is speaking it to you, but we've just been overruling it and overriding it for a really long time. So instead of trying to do the surface things to like get at the symptoms, I invite people to begin first of all with the awareness, because I assure you that after listening to this, like in the coming 24 or 48 hours, it will occur to someone who's listening to this that, oh my gosh, that's fear. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid. I didn't realize that. Just shining the light of awareness on it is like a very big first step that gradually starts to dissolve the hold that those thought habits have on you just by seeing it. Okay. Now, the next thing that I really think is important for most of us to do, and no, you know, our culture is not really teaching people how to do it anymore, is to develop an inner life, right? To develop practices and rituals that allow you to get like literally, whether it's a meditation practice, I teach like a 4-part daily ritual that I ask people to do in the morning before the rest of the world can start like showering you with that onslaught of like content and messages and demands and mom and calendar and whatever. Like, develop a very protected time of the day where you can just be, where you can slow down, right? Slow down the pace of your thoughts a little bit. Ideally, that you can journal a little bit and brain dump some of the grudges and grievances and thoughts and whatever, and get like a little bit of still and quiet in your mind. It's surprising at how much of a leg up that gives you in getting out in front of the fear program and all the other programs, right? You just start to see them more, and you start to gradually be like, well, I could do that. I process a lot in my journaling. Right? I could do that knee-jerk reaction I always have had, or I could just like brain dump the way I feel about it and gracefully, gradually make a different choice. So a lot of this work is about breaking the pull of your unconscious patterns and programs, and having some sort of daily ritual before the world gets to you is almost essential. I don't even know if you can really do the work without starting there.
So I'm going to digest this. You are listening, and there's a ton coming at you, but the kernel of where do I begin and how do I change once I have identified that I'm embodying some sort of thing, procrastination, perfectionism, codependency, and the root of that is fear. And all of a sudden, in the next 24 to 48 hours, you are going to start to see the pulling of I want to fix or I want to help. And then you realize, oh, that's fear. What am I not addressing? Oh, I have to wait until this is perfect, or I know enough, or I can do enough. I'm like, wait, that's actually fear of what? And then what Tara-Nicholle Kirke is walking us through, ladies and gentlemen, is can you just write it down? Can you create a ritual of some sort? And she's not even saying buy a special journal. She's not saying do a special chant. It's can you love yourself for 5 to 7 minutes and just write down a brain dump, no rules, and it will speak back to you. Do I understand that clearly?
You understand that correctly. And like, I love the phrasing of like, can you give yourself that gift?
Mhm.
I love, and I think the other thing that you just said in your saying that back that's super important to emphasize is no rules. There's
Mm.
no rule. If you are
Mhm.
being taught that you got to meditate a certain way or journal a certain way, like
Yes.
fire your teacher. Like they're fired. Let me fire them for you because I ain't got a problem firing people. Like let it be a brain dump. Let it be the grocery list if that's what needs to come out. Let it
Ooh.
be a grudge from 40 years ago or from yesterday if it needs to come out, because often it's right under that stuff. That's where all of your divine downloads, your golden threads of inspiration, those like your beautiful ideas, those little impulses that are like, my friend Artie always says, sometimes your muse just wants you to go get a burrito, right? It's not always deep, and we put too much pressure on it ourselves that everything that comes out in our journaling has to be deep or we got to tie it up in a pretty bow, and it
Mhm.
doesn't. But often right under the silly, not deep stuff is like the inspiration to go get a burrito. And on the way to get a burrito, you see a thing or learn a thing that actually turns out to be really important later in your day or life or project or whatever.
I could
Right?
not agree more with this. I am just smitten. Okay, but one thing I want to be very clear for people who like are understanding the assignment, but they're not quite understanding the
Yeah.
professor. So we're calling you an entrepreneur coach. Is that how you would define
I
yourself?
sure. Mhm.
Okay, well, it's kind of I'm not I wasn't sold because there's a ton of spirituality in what it is that you do. So I
Totally, because
understand.
I don't
So
think they're different. I call
give me the
myself a
30
master
second.
coach.
Good.
That's
Okay, so
I call
break this
myself a
down.
yes, I call myself a master coach, a metaphysician, and a spiritual strategist. And I say spiritual strategist because I do not think that there is a different when I coach someone, and I almost only coach entrepreneurs. So that's true. In my individual coaching practice, I almost only work with entrepreneurs. And what I do with them is actually tends to be hybrid coaching and consulting. So
Mhm.
like some days they come in and they need to talk about their marriage. Some days they come in and they need to talk about their money fears. Some days they need to come in and I need to talk about their brand messaging and positioning because I was a CMO and I can't help it. I can't turn it off. So in my one-on-one coaching practice, it is almost only entrepreneurs, but what we coach through is a very fully integrated roadmap of like you into more and more and more into fulfillment of your sacred contracts and sacred potentials, and the actual strategic things that you got to do, the decisions you got to make on an everyday basis to do that. So
Okay,
sometimes
so
it's yeah.
no, you slipped in a CMO. Can we talk about your origin story?
Yeah, it's deep. I have a crazy origin story. So I have a master's degree in psychology. I have a law degree from UC Berkeley. I practiced the law for a while, and I represented a bunch of real estate people in the real estate industry. I ended up leaving the law to go into the real estate industry, wrote a book about real estate that was licensed by HGTV, and HGTV like media trained me and put me on the road for them as a spokesperson. And so that was actually how I became a marketer. I was not like a trained marketer. I just had this beautiful, very intensive experience at working as a marketer for several years for HGTV. So when I was done there, I went in-house and was a marketer at Trulia.com, the real estate search engine.
Yes.
Um, I worked in Silicon Valley for a long time as a marketing consultant for startups. And then I was the chief marketing officer at MyFitnessPal, which is still actually probably the world's largest health and fitness app. So that's a very short story on my um, career origin story.
And then what's the pivot point? Like what happens when we come out like, okay, girl has street credibility and she's basically an underachiever because, and then what intersection, what happens? Like
I mean,
what
so
is
what happened was Under Armour bought MyFitnessPal. I left the company. I rode my bike around Croatia for some delicious months. I mean, it was really real. And then I thought that what I was going to, I wrote a book called The Transformational Consumer. And it was all about all the experiences I had had throughout my career as a marketer, actually throughout my life. My parents owned a gym when I was a kid. So from the time I was like 9 years old, I was just like fascinated with people who were wanting to make changes in their lives to be healthier, wealthier, or wiser. And that was just like kind of a pattern that I'd always only worked on, projects and brands that were like that. So I wrote this book, The Transformational Consumer, about how entrepreneurs and companies could do that, could really win, really like kind of fanatical, lifelong love, have love affairs with their customers by helping them live better lives. And I thought what I was going to do was start a consulting company helping people do that in their businesses. But as I started consulting with these CMOs and CEOs and marketing teams and product teams, I realized my takeaway was these people know what to do. These people know what to do. They lack the voice, the influence, the grounding, the personal. I was doing a lot of coaching, even CEOs who had founded the companies. I was coaching them on how to like bring the whole company along to this like meaningful, purposeful, transformational vision. And so like one day I was at this big conference and the CEO of a very well-known company was like watching me like just talk to people how I talk to people, watching me have church. Basically. And he came, I even know this guy, and he literally came up to me and was like, I hear that you're a marketer. I'm sure you're good at it. This is what you should be doing for a living. Like, this is crazy. And that was sort of the beginning of, me leaving just like straight consultant and coming into the world of what now my company is called Soul Tour, where I basically help people take their callings and their crises, their callings and their catastrophes, and turn them into progress on their spiritual journey. And as almost a happy side effect accident, you also get wealthier, you also get wiser, you also get sexier, you also like your body gets better, like life gets really good, and you get really skilled up to deal with like the really real shit, including like facing your past trauma and breaking generational curses and dealing with pandemics and stuff.
So what people hear and what people see is you in your zone of genius. And the reason why I could speak clearly to the zone of genius, because I've heard you talk about it before and it was a game changer for me. Can you explain how you define the zone of genius? And then once you have that definition, people could look at you and be like, that queen is in her zone of genius. And I hope that at some point during the podcast from now until we continue to podcast, that somebody could say, I see her in her zone of genius. And then how do you define it? How does one find it?
Yeah. And so like the zone of genius concept is not one that I came up with. I have
Correct.
to give,
sorry.
yes.
No, I'm sorry.
But I do I teach it and I like preach it. So like,
but it comes to me,
yes.
People get it, but like the way that you say it.
So Gay Hendricks is who I originally learned this concept from. And the idea is that all of human activity can be broken down into 4 zones. Okay. There's your zone of incompetence, which is like, am I allowed to curse?
Yes. Okay. You do you, go. You
okay,
do
good. Okay, because I'm definitely a Buddhist Black church lady, and I definitely get there. See, yes. So there's a zone of incompetence, which is the zone of activities you ain't got no freaking business doing. Like, you should just stop doing that shit. And we're all doing it. We all do stuff we have no business doing, and we're just not good at it. But like, we're telling ourselves.
Hold on, this is a side note. I'm totally distracting you. But why do we do that? No, I'm not asking a rhetorical question. I really want to hear from you.
No, I'm gonna give you a real answer.
Okay.
I think we do it. I think people do it out of guilt. I think people do it out of scarcity. I think people do it out of this, like, this idea that they've got to be virtuous. So I'll tell you, there's a teacher who has this. There's a teacher like in the world right now who's talking a lot about like $1 million decisions, and I see a lot of people going, oh yeah, that's like I'm gonna get a housekeeper. And I'm like, maybe, like, yes. And they're like, what? And I see a lot of conversation about like, how do I clean before my housekeeper comes? And I'm like, girl, you are doing it really wrong. Okay. Like, I know what my zone of genius has nothing to do with details or cleaning or what. So I have a housekeeper like literally once a week for years. I've had a housekeeper. My babysitter, I actually just hired this sitter for overnight babysitter twice a month for the rest of the year, because I could see last year as I was wanting to write fiction and do some things that were like deeper and different and it more just out of the box for me, but felt so good. Because that's your zone of genius always feels really good too, lights you up. I could see that like I want to be with the baby all the time. Like I'm actually not always in my zone of genius. I am not filling my cup, and I'm not allowing myself to to live the unlived life that would be maximally like liberating for me and for her. Right. So I was like, then I'm going to find like, and I have this sitter who's like the best with her. And I'm like, she's in her zone of genius. Like for 2 nights a month, I'm going to do that. And to me, that's like, it may or may not make me $1 million, but it felt like $1 million decision. And it keeps us both in our zone of genius. So zone of incompetence, I think a lot of people don't allow themselves to get all the way out of it because they're telling themselves the story that it costs too much or that they don't. It's the scarcity thing. And it can be an unworthiness thing too. Like
So
I should be able to.
Yes. So you listed guilt. You had
Scarcity,
listed scarcity,
unworthiness.
And I'm sure there's other things in there, but the
Those
one
are
that
big
like
ones.
hit me was it wasn't guilt. I do a ton. I stay in a zone of incompetence far too long, and it's scarcity, girl.
Scarcity.
I grew up without money, and so
Yes.
I have money, and let me just do this because I can keep that
money. Girl, let
me
tell you something that was then. This is now.
That's crazy.
Then,
that just like slapped me upside my face.
This is now. That was them. This is you.
That's right.
You don't give your your grandparents, your ancestors a different life than they had by doing broke stuff now. You know what I'm saying? And like the point is joy. The point is not the money.
Correct.
The point is not the money. The point is wholeness in your zone of genius, fulfilling your sacred contracts, meaning, liberation, joy. That's the point. So like, it's not even about how much cash can I amass in this life before I die. Like you don't get extra credit for that. You know what I'm saying? So like spend the money you have. And I'm not saying spend all the money you have. I'm not saying be irresponsible. I'm just saying like, that is what it is there for.
Okay. So shout out.
That's zone of incompetence.
Hendrix. No, see, Gay Hendrix is like, we're talking about different zones. Yes. But the reason why I asked you specifically to detour on zone of incompetence is because you speak to me and others very clearly. So
yes. Okay, but I got to get to that's zone 1, zone of incompetence. Then there's zone of competence. Yes. If in a best case, in an ideal world, yes, we would. All right, so there's zone of competence, which is stuff that you're as good at as anyone else, but you shouldn't spend too much time doing that stuff either. Then the tricky ones, zone of excellence and zone of genius. So you always hear people out here want to be excellent because we were all raised to perform and conform and produce and achieve to get love, essentially. Excellence is where you're really good. You're really good at this thing, but it's really freaking depleting. Like you don't actually love it. The zone of excellence is actually the one to pay attention to because it's where people get trapped. It's where people get stuck in shadow jobs. It's for a lifetime sometimes. It's where people get so much external validation because usually when you're in your zone of genius, especially in like a corporate job, you're making somebody else a lot of money. Other people love that you'll do it. Right. So it's all these, and I hear this a lot. I have a lot of women come in especially women come in who are like, I'm really good at making calm from chaos. I've heard that phrase a million times. Same here. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, y'all should not even be advertising that shit. Because that's why chaos keeps coming your way. It's the chaos makers are like, who can make it calm?
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny.
It's emotional. No. It gets emotional around here. Shoot. Okay. So your zone of excellence is the one where you gotta be intentional. about detecting, it's like everything else. You got to be intentional about hearing and heeding your own inner guidance and hearing the disharmony from when you get stuck there. And it's hard because usually you're getting money there, you're getting status there, you're probably getting a lot of promotions there. You're definitely getting a lot of external validation because your work there is really good and it makes other people happy. All right. But then your zone of genius. So your zone of genius is where you are basically the best in the world at whatever that thing is, whatever that activity is. And I like to think of it as an activity because it's something you get to do over and over. Like, the good life happens when you can start to expand the number of moments of your day you're doing this activity, right? Whether you're doing it for a living or not. But in your zone of genius, not only are you wonderful at doing the thing, it's also lighting you up. It's like you get more energized the more you do it. It's like other people are looking at you being like, wow, you are working so hard. And you're like, but am I? Like, I don't know. This feels wonderful. Right? So that's the zone of genius. And it is true. Once you know this framework, you see people in the world and you'll be like, oh, that's what it looks like. That is her in her zone of genius. Right? And hopefully you'll have that spark of recognition when you're in it too. And you can begin that process of just like stretching the moments of the day that you get to be in yours. And then maybe someday, shifting to where it's like mostly what you get to be and do.
So how do you balance this? I'm in my zone of genius and then dealing with the inner critic. Like, where does the inner critic flex his or her muscle?
Everywhere.
Right.
So like everywhere.
Okay. So somebody's listening. And so I want to back up to one thing you had said. You said, you're the best in the world at what you do. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I'm not the best in the world at this, like,
oh, but there's something you're the best at. Well, first of all, it's really not about comparing yourself to someone else. It's really not. But it's like, but there is like my best in the world stuff is weird stuff. It's not like an Amazon bestseller tag where you have to slot it into some category, right?
Okay,
so there's like,
example, what are you the best in the world?
Like, I'm the best in the world at helping people wake up from fear and reinvent their lives. Like, it's for me, it's like and I'm really the best in the world at doing that through telling sacred stories in transformational ways. Like, it's a really specific kind of thing. And Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap, he has like a bunch of questions he actually guides you through. That book is like literally game changer. It's such a good book. And so he does have a bunch of interview questions, and they're kind of like that. It's somewhat tangentially related to the idea of what you're doing when you find yourself in the flow state, right? So there's all these like sort of lenses at it, and you shouldn't expect, this is a thing I was just talking with someone about actually earlier today. I think in our culture, we have a tendency, especially among the high achievers, we have a tendency to want the answers, to want them to be neat, to tie them up in a bow, and to want them to be done, even when it comes to our inner work. Like, it's kind of like, I want to know my zone of genius, damn it, and I want to know it right now. And actually, when you work with, like, I work a lot with depth psychology and archetypal psychology, like the psychology of Carl Jung, and many, many other indigenous approaches to psychology that are very surprisingly similar to Jungian psychology. The work of the unconscious is just not that cut and dry. Like, your understanding of what your zone of genius is likely will dawn on you. Like, you're already on the journey to discovering it. That's why you're listening to this. Like, you called us in. You made us be here in your ear today. Facts. Right? And then, like, it will dawn on you gradually. You'll be maybe you'll get the book. Maybe you'll be in a moment of doing something and you'll be like, oh, this is that for me. And sometimes, like, for me, I think of, teaching as part of my sacred contract and my zone of genius. But like I teach in different ways. Sometimes I literally teach in front of a room. Sometimes I teach on a Zoom. Sometimes I teach in writing. Sometimes, but it's still like transmitting. You know what I mean? So like you come up and let it take the time it takes to unfold in you and to become clear to you, but know that you have one.
So again, going back to somebody who is like kind of like this eye-opening moment of, oh, it doesn't feel like I've been here 2 hours and it doesn't feel like 2 hours. And oh, it comes to me and other people have said that I'm really good at it and it lights me up.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the inner saboteur, the critic comes out.
Yeah.
So as we kind of like tie up, and now I know that our moments of enlightenment will not be packaged up and delivered in 2 days like Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And I know that emotional development will not either. And I'm not asking for an answer in this way. But as we kind of tie up this conversation, I'm going to loop it all back. But for somebody who is discovering and teetering and making a decision to move from that zone of excellence into zone of genius, and they realize like this is the thing that it is, and undercovering the roots of fear and no longer pursuing perfection or pursuing codependency, and then taking the time to step back and fulfill their sacred contracts, and then making time and space not to be in that zone of incompetence. And then they make this up and they feel like I am doing the work. And then the inner critic comes. What then now?
Know this. If your inner critic shows up, you 100% are doing it right.
Oh, come on.
100%. Your inner critic doesn't show up when you're playing it safe, when you're staying in your zone.
That is the truth with the capital T. Hot dang.
If your inner critic shows up, your inner critic is the voice of fear, right? Its whole job, it's actually like this very well-intentioned, protective force that just over a lifetime gets very hardened and harsh and hindering and counterproductive. So your inner critic only shows up when you feel exposed or vulnerable or afraid. And oh, by the way, all the things that you do in your zone of genius and all the things that you do to fulfill your sacred contract make you feel a little scared, a little exposed, a little vulnerable, or a lot. So just know your inner critic will fight to stay alive. It's fear, and fear is it's a program. It will, and you can get, and just knowing it's a program allows you to a little bit let the program run in the background without letting it run your life. Right? So if you feel your inner critic show up, be like, don't try to silence it, slay it, mute it, quiet it, pun it, obliterate it. Just befriend it. You can even thank it. Thanks for trying to keep me safe. Right? Like, thanks, but no thanks, I got this. I'm in the steering wheel, and just be gradual about it. Just be gradual about it. Let just seeing it be the win for a minute. You're doing it right.
Let just seeing fear be the win for the minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we started this conversation by creating space and asking for what it is we want, and not just asking for it. We actually have to clear out things from our lives to make space for it. And then we moved into this idea of sabotage. And we were clearly instructed that self-sabotage is fear in multiple forms. And we end the conversation with fear in the form of the inner critic. I hope more than anything that the doubts or the fears that you hear today, you will have an awareness of and then have an awakening. And once you have that moment of awakening, you're just getting started. Just that's the first step. And so people who want to pursue more steps and follow you and get to know you and just kind of watch you from a distance before they build up the courage to reach out to you, like your girl right here, where can they find you and your brilliance and your guiding light?
Yes, ma'am. They should come to soultour.com/sign up. And that just gets you my newsletter. I send out stuff all the time. I send out my little downloads when they come through. And I also send out lots of invitations to join me at different, programs and things. So soultour.com/sign up.
I love that. I love the time that you have spent with us. I love that you are carving time away from your family, sharing the most valuable asset you own, which is your time and your brilliance and your knowledge and your experience, and sharing it so generously. Thank you, sweet, sweet, brilliant soul. I appreciate you.
Thank
bless
you,
us.
Jasmine. This is lovely. Thank you so much.